I am a floating voter. I'm not affiliated to any party. I voted from, the Green Party, SNP, Lib Dem, Labour, depending on the election, depending on policy. I'm that type of voter.
Okay.
And I found myself watching, I think it was Newsnight last night. I've been home recently because I've had an eye procedure, so I'm listening a lot more to talk sport, news, etc.
Yeah.
But last night I was watching Newsnight and I found myself clapping when I heard this policy. Personally, I think it's a brilliant policy.
It's a brilliant policy, but I once had an editor that I used to work for who said a brilliant idea is only one that can be made to work.
Absolutely.
I don't know that this one is going to be that easy to work, and I don't know anyone who's not from the Labour Party who thinks it can be done.
Ideas are worthless. They only hold value once they're put into practice.
Right.
But I don't see why this couldn't be put into practice. It's such a simple thing to put into practice. I understand it might be quite radical from maybe a conservative point of view or a conservative way of thinking. Oh my God, we're going to renationalise something. But
it's not so. I don't think it's that. I mean, I don't think it's so radical. The problem is, I'm told that BT Openreach is not actually owned by BT. The infrastructure of that is owned by Virgin Media. So they'd have to at least compensate either both BT and Virgin, or one or the other. They'd then have to somehow find the money for providing the service that otherwise would be paid for. So it's a lot of money. It's quite a big infrastructure to do as well. And
Absolutely.
also, as you all know from living in Scotland, there are parts of Scotland where the broadband isn't very good.
There's parts of Scotland where you can't get broadband.
Exactly. So how are they going to fix that problem?
But I don't think it's really relevant who owns, the part that you're going to nationalise. I understand that's part of the problem, but it's not an insurmountable problem, really, is it?
Well, no, but the point is you can't. Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, but Imran, we're not living in Venezuela. You can't just go and grab any company you want and go. This is not a problem. It's now belonging to the state.
There's a process involved. There's lots of talking involved. There's lots of meetings. Understandably, you're not just going to click your fingers and demand that you're going to renationalise this part, but the point I'm making is it is quite a innovative kind of idea to renationalise part of the internet. I mean, it's quite a fundamental need for folk to have access to the internet.
Well, there's a lot of other fundamental needs, like we've just been talking about all these 22,000 vulnerable young people at risk of homelessness. I think I'd rather see a political party doing something about that before they give me free internet,
Yeah, they might want to add a caveat that there'd be certain services that will be omitted from the free service. But it is quite it's a fundamental need in terms of education.
Well, it didn't used to be, because it didn't used to exist. Yeah, but Imran, it didn't used to exist, and if you haven't got a home, there's not much point in giving you free broadband, is there?
Yeah, well, you can get free broadband, and these homeless folks, I'm sure they do have shelter. I don't know.
Well, of course they don't. That's why they're homeless. They don't have shelter. They're homeless. That's the point.
The 20,000 homeless children, that's another factor. I'm here to really talk about how good a policy I think this
No, I know, you said that, but I'm saying to you I don't think it's so good. One, because I'm not sure that it works. Two, it doesn't seem to be entirely fair, because the Labour Party is supposed to be about helping those who can't help themselves. They're supposed to be for the many, not the few. Seems to me this is giving free stuff to people that can afford to pay for it.
Well, if this will be a service. I'm sure other companies will still offer better services. I'm sure this will maybe be
now you want the government to be a competitor with private companies, giving stuff away free.
With private companies and other factors like healthcare. It will be so if it renationalises the internet as well.
No, I think it's a crazy idea, Imran. But here's another question for you. How comfortable would you be having free internet provided by the government?
How comfortable would I be?
Yeah, because that's what happens in places like China.
Yeah, it wouldn't make me uncomfortable. So long as it wasn't the only internet service that was available in the country, it wouldn't make me uncomfortable, If that was an option on the table, if there's poor and underprivileged children that don't have access to the internet, that can't use the internet as a resource for education, that creates it's not a level playing field.
I think they'd rather have food on the table than a home, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's where the welfare state does help them as well.
Well, I would go with Orwell's definition, you are in rent poverty. And I'm sorry, we've never lived in such affluent times. I live in North London. Just go around the council estates and see the cars that are parked outside. It's ridiculous.
What, you mean how nice they are?
Indeed. But also as well, I mingle with lots of people that call themselves working class, and I say, do you own your own property?
Yeah.
Come on, get real.
But, why are we so obsessed with class, Paul? Because I think we really are, because either in one direction or the other. Some people want to be working class, other people want to be middle class. The one thing I would say is that none of us, you can never become upper class. You're either born into that or you're not.
I absolutely agree. I mean, you've stolen my words. I was just about to say the same thing. I come from a very impoverished background. I grew up in children's homes, a very dysfunctional family. I was dyslexic, left school with no qualifications. But still, that's no excuse for you to want to strive. And in fact, it was a good thing for me because it actually made me, want to better myself. I think probably the problem we got is that people maybe don't have that sort of stress on them and things are a little bit too easy.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a separate topic.
Yeah, because I think, a lot of what we call the millennials who come into workplaces now who have come from quite middle-class backgrounds have never had to strive very hard or work very hard for anything. So if they suddenly are presented with some kind of adversity, they kind of don't know what to do.
Absolutely. I actually sit with my own family, and there's 14 years between me and my younger brother. And I don't know if you've witnessed this, but so what happens is sometimes the first child is maybe treated a little bit more harshly, and then along comes the second and third. And my brother was absolutely mollycoddled, and he's just, he's just like that. He can't do anything for himself.
Right.
And we're so geometrically opposed, me and him. We just can't get on because of that reason. So what more can I say?
So do you consider yourself working class now? Because, our professor there was saying it's kind of determined by your father's job and I guess your job. My father was a newspaper artist, but he was very much from a working class background. During the course of their parenting me and bringing me up in London, I think I became middle class. And I went to university, which definitely makes me middle class.
Yeah, there was certainly not that sort of aspiration in my family. I didn't really know much of my father. He departed when I was very young. Apparently he was a baker and a very good baker.
Okay.
My mother had no formal education at all. I was taken off into care when I was 11 years old.
Right.
And so actually getting an education was the least of my worries.
Okay.
But I don't know where. I certainly wouldn't say that I'm middle class. I just categorise yourself as.
Well, I'm glad that you can't. Maybe
yourself in a box.
Maybe we're moving forward if you can't actually categorise yourself. Maybe that's a good thing.
I think a lot of it comes down to kind of how much knowledge you're going to gain, wisdom, education. Maybe you could define it by that. Maybe.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't want to say to people because you're working class, you're not as clever as somebody who's middle class. That would be wrong.
Oh, God, no. No, I mean, I was training two people today. This is what I do, right?
Right.
I'm a PT. One of them comes from a working class background. The other one, just like you said, he's, millennium, mother and father really rich. In fact, I trained his mother. He's just not switched on at all. Absolutely not. And do you know what? He's a bigger, stronger guy than the other guy who's more my age in his 50s.
Right.
But this working class guy was just bang on it, and he could pick everything up straight away. We're all friends, right? Yeah. But the other one, who's comes from a very affluent background, he's just not. And I trained his mother, right? And even his mother, we joke about this, we laugh about it. He's just not switched on.
Right.
I think it just comes down to the fact. I have discussed this with her numerous times. It's the fact that he didn't have that kind of stress, and she had that stress. She came over from Australia with no money at all, and she just built this really big business.
Right.
So when he came along, he had really nothing to worry about. He lived in a big home in Hampstead, but he just can't seem to get his together, right?
Right. Well, if you've got a big home in Hampstead, maybe you don't need to worry about it.
No, I just think this election is going to be coming a vote between anybody else and Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
I just think the man and his ideas are just dangerous because they're just going to get us in trouble in the end. Well, in the end,
how much more? We've still got nearly 4 weeks to go. How much more can they promise to give us for free?
Well, it's not just a free. It's just there's so many people banned from broadband. They're going to be able to have it for free. There's people in the world who work hard for broadband and enjoy that broadband, and people just want to give it for free. You can't just do that. Yeah.
When you say people are banned, what do you mean?
Well, I'm talking about like terrorists and people like that. And
I see. Yeah, well, you can't. Well, presumably they'd remain banned, wouldn't they?
Well, you don't know. He's giving everything else for free, so you might as well just free up to everyone.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Also, there are parts of Britain where you can't get broadband, right? So there's no point in offering it to them.
What are they going to do as well?
Right.
But I just don't think. Look, at least the Lib Dems have come out with an actual said they'll remain, and they want to remain, and if they're sticking by that, fair play to them. But I just think Jeremy Corbyn is a protester and just a sympathiser. I just don't think he's a leader, and he couldn't lead this country.
Well, I think the problem, as we've seen in the past with the position on Brexit, is that the Labour Party are the party of sort of what they call agreement. They don't... I mean, we had Emily Thornberry talking to an interviewer the other day saying that if Jeremy Corbyn refused as Prime Minister to use the nuclear deterrent, the Cabinet would basically do it for him.
It's just unbelievable. He's just divvying on everything. He's divvying on anything to go. At least Joe Swinson has made something. At least the SNP want to keep Scotland in the European Union and everything like that. Everybody's making things that they want to do or making decisions that they want to do. But Jeremy Corbyn is just sitting on everyone's fence and just coming up with loony ideas.
Yeah.
Does he think the people of this country are stupid?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, don't you think as well that the electorate in general is not just fed up with people like Jeremy Corbyn offering stuff, but also all the rest of them offering stuff which that they can't deliver?
There's people going to go to the ballot box and they're going to put a cross by the Tory party and they're going to do it against every will they've ever had in their life. But they're going to have to do it because they know it's probably the only sensible option, or even Lib Dems, because at least they've got a policy.
Yes. No, I think that's a fascinating...
It's just absolutely crazy that people are going to actually put a cross by Labour knowing what's actually going to come. You can't... People just can't go that.
I technically, growing up, I came from a Conservative household. I came from the northwest, Chorley, which was bizarrely a Conservative stronghold.
Oh yeah,
with a rather amusingly named Den Dover.
Yes, well, probably the less we say about that, the better.
Exactly. And I was saying to my partner, do you know, I don't know why I'm going to vote. And then I turned around to the other night and said, I'm going to vote Labour.
Right.
Because I can't see a way forward with the Tories, so I'm going to go Labour. And I've made that decision. And then it's almost like he's snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
What, by giving away all this free stuff?
Look, if you're going to give away a free utility, give away water.
Yeah.
Or electricity. Don't give away Wi-Fi.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've said, Ren, is that surely the whole point of this, for the many, not the few, is that you don't give away free stuff to people who can afford to pay for it.
Exactly, and I think you could argue, by extension, that same argument by the NHS as well. But in this instance, you know, I said I'm going to vote Labour, and I put it down there, and I was going to go and, you know, register to vote.
Yeah.
And Corbyn comes out with this, and it's like, what?
Hmm. But why? I mean, why would you? I mean, I've already had a couple of calls from people saying we think this is a great idea. You know, it may well be that they're Labour backers anyway. But why would you say it's a bad idea? Do you think people are just not going to believe it?
Yes, exactly, and it's further crushing the two-party system right into the ground.
Right.
I don't really think it's any coincidence that Parliament was actually dissolved on bonfire night. By the way.
No. I mean, it's a rather interesting little twist, wasn't it? After everything else. I
sensed it coming, and I think a lot of other people did as well. That there was something coming up to the 31st, Halloween, and then it's like, actually, there's two Halloweens. People probably aren't aware of this, is that what we celebrate in this country as Halloween is All Souls Eve.
Yeah.
But actually, the old Halloween was the 6th. And
6th of November?
Yeah, well, kind of around about that. It's a bit of a movable feast.
All right.
It depends when the sun's 15 degrees in Scorpio, and that I'm getting a little bit esoteric here, but the point is that if you really want to help people, I'd love free Wi-Fi. I've just had to pay for my mobile phone last night.
Yeah. Well, I've got to renew my Wi-Fi with somebody else, right? Because the people I've currently got it with, I'm not going to give them a free plug. I'm going to stop giving me Wi-Fi on the grounds that I haven't got any fibre that they can give it to me through. So that's the way I am. So I'm just going to wait now to get the free Wi-Fi, free Labour Wi-Fi, for the many, not the few, which I can't wait for, really. Ren, thank you very much. I've got to run because I'm joined by Alex Phillips from the Brexit Party, MEP for South East England. Alex, welcome.
Nice to be here.
Very good morning to you. Now, you were a bit feisty last night on Question Time, I thought, accusing the Tory party of trying to bribe members of the Brexit Party. Now, Nigel Farage has come out and actually named somebody now. And I'm not going to ask you to name any names because obviously that could start to get a bit tricky. But what is happening here? What is going on?
It seems to me like there has been desperation and panic in the Conservative Party headquarters about trying to get this majority, which clearly they're worried they're not going to do. And there have been numerous phone calls up and down down the country to Brexit Party candidates, trying to encourage them or coerce them into standing down. Now, as far as I'm aware, some of those conversations have just been about, you will let in someone from the Labour Party if you stand. Other conversations have been saying, it's okay, we'll sort you out. Don't worry, there'll be something...
Have those sort of we'll sort you out suggestions been specific, or have they been vague?
I think there'll be things that will emerge over the next few weeks. I don't want to sort of start naming names and specific examples, but I've received a number of messages. I personally have had 4 people message me saying, yeah, it's happened to me.
Right. Your messages from Brexit Party candidates rather than from the Tories?
Exactly,
right.
yeah. And they haven't bothered approaching me. I'm a lost cause.
Well, you might have been approached if you were running, because at one point you were going to run, weren't you?
I was, yeah, no, but I was going to run in Thurrock, actually, so there you have it. I may as well say it now that it's not happening. I was really going to give them a run for their money down there. But no, I don't think they'd have bothered trying to woo me. I think I'm unwooable.
Night, James Cleverly, who is the party chairman, he basically, he looked a little bit shifty, I have to say, but he did deny that it was a kind of a programme, as it were. He did say that it's possible that individual Tories might be making phone calls to people from the Brexit Party who might previously have been Conservatives, but he also didn't really deny it outright, did he?
Well, no, because there's no point denying it. It's true. And
well, I
the
can't take your word
is,
for that. As much as I trust you, Alex, I can't just sit here and go, oh, okay then. Well, that's great. Because we will have to, at some point, somebody's going to have to provide evidence.
Yeah, of course. That will have to happen if it proceeds into some sort of criminal investigation. I don't know in terms of the legal situation whether a law has been breached. We're in live election time, so I'd imagine there's, it would compromise a free and fair election.
I mean, some people are calling for certainly a police investigation to happen. As far as I know, that has not happened yet. But, are these people who are saying that they've been approached, are they still current Brexit Party candidates who are still standing?
Yeah, there are. And I don't know the full extent of this. I'm not in touch with 300 candidates across the country. The ones who have messaged me are ones that I know personally. And that's a pretty high hit rate already.
Right.
I mean, you've had Edward Lister come out today and say, I did make a phone call, but nothing was offered. I mean, look, unless these phone calls have been recorded, who knows? Yeah. And I think if people have been tempted by things, they're unlikely now, if they have stood down and been tempted by things, to turn around and say, oh, yeah. But I would say this, those people who thought there might be little presents coming over the horizon, I think now the Conservatives are in full denial mood, will soon find that little promise would have been dropped.
Well, it's interesting if somebody like Sir Edward Lister, who was named by Nigel Farage, who is Boris Johnson's chief strategic advisor, if he's calling people from inside Downing Street, presumably there will be a record of that.
You'd think so,
because
yes.
Even if they're not recording the conversation, they're logging a conversation, and if they're not logging a conversation, then there might be a problem.
Well, I don't know where he was when he made the phone call, but he has said today, yes, I did make one phone call, for sure. But one, look, I'm fairly certain this is definitely more than just one phone call. Like I said, I've got direct evidence of 4 people. No, 5, actually.
And have any of them succumbed, as it were?
Well, who knows? I don't know. I don't know the circumstances of those people who have pulled out.
But I mean, those who have contacted you to say that they've been
those people
approached.
the people who've contacted me to say they've been approached.
Right.
I mean, they've all said they told the Conservatives where to stick their offer.
Right. I mean, the trouble with all of this, I suppose, is that because the can of worms has been opened in terms of the Brexit Party's own strategy, which was to pull a load of candidates in the first instance, then to be told by the Tories, well, why don't you pull some more? And that was all official. Then you see the Remain alliance on the other side. The whole kind of system has been messed around with here, hasn't it?
The system has been messed around with. There's one thing about alliances and pacts during election time, and people have different opinions on that. I'm not particularly for them because I think it disenfranchises people, but I do think that the blame has to be levied directly at the two-party system we have, the first past the post duopoly, and that needs to change, but that's a big conversation for another day. But I think there's a very different situation going on when you've got a party that's been in power, or effectively are still in power nominally, using their powers of patronage to try and remove candidates from a rival political party. That's the sort of behaviour you should not have to tolerate in any country, in any democracy in the 21st century. And I think it's quite clear, actually, if you look at the Conservatives have been in power for 10 years now, but they haven't been cleanly in power for 10 years. They started off having to be in a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. They're now in a situation where it's a minority government, and Boris Johnson's polling at the moment, remember this time 2 years ago during the last snap election, Theresa May was on about 47% in the polls. Now, Boris is at least 7 points below that, at least.
Yeah.
But so
far he hasn't come up with a sort of a suicide campaign slogan, has he? Like the dementia tax, which was what really harmed her. It wasn't so much that she wasn't as good as him. It was just that she came up with this ridiculous policy, which people went, "Hang on a minute, we're not going to vote for you."
Well, that and the fact that she said "strong and stable" about 5,386 times a day.
Yes,
which was just agonising.
It wasn't true either.
It was just really bizarre.
But I go back again though to the kind of, if you open the can of worms, I'm not for a minute suggesting that if the Tories have been doing something illegal, they should be able to do it. But the fact that they can make phone calls and suggest things in a kind of atmosphere and an environment where deals are being done doesn't surprise me, really.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, I've worked in politics in various countries, and I've seen these coalitions form in many countries, especially you get them a lot in the developing world, where you have balkanised voting blocks. So that usually is based on different tribes and different ethnicities who then come together to face down somebody in power. And by and large, these alliances rarely deliver to the electorate what people want them to deliver. It's a last-minute mad dash panic, and what happens is actual politicking and policy making and pledges just go out the window. And I think that's what we're seeing happen today, where once again it's become a binary choice. And most of the country, actually, I'd say probably a majority of the country, don't want either candidate. And that's alarming. That's alarming when you've got, you know, most people saying, oh, well, does it have to be just these two? And so then when you get parties who have broken through, entryist small parties, just not even remotely being able to compete in the system because it's essentially rigged to maintain the duopoly. Yeah. And the two establishment parties know that full well and use it to their advantage every single time.
Which is why Nigel Farage made the decision that he made, which was not popular even within the Brexit party.
I don't think it was popular with himself even.
Well, I mean, I don't think you were very keen on it.
I don't think he was very keen on it.
Equally, a lot of Brexit party voters who were planning to vote Brexit were very disappointed because they feel as though they've now been betrayed not only by the main political parties but also by the Brexit party.
Yeah, and what sort of electoral outcome is this going to deliver? Because frankly, for those people who really want Brexit, if Boris gets a majority, I don't think that anything's holding his feet to the fire during this next most critical stage of negotiations. I think people think that when Boris's so-called deal goes through, if he gets a majority and if that happens, that then great, we've left the EU and that's the end of it. Far from it. That's actually the beginning. That's the door opening.
Yeah, but at least it's something happening. I think it's how people feel. And presumably, if the Brexit Party was able to get 4 or 5, I mean, I've said I don't think they can get more than 6, and I could be proved wrong by that. But if they were to get that many seats, I mean, they could be crucial in another alliance in Parliament post the election. And I'm sure that Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party wouldn't turn that down.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's so critical now for us as a party, that we do want to have desperately representation in Westminster because it keeps us able to hold Boris Johnson and the Conservative government to account, not necessarily as a coalition partner, but as someone who would say, A, we're not going to back this if it doesn't meet the standards that Brexiteers would expect from negotiations, but also to have a platform to be able to have your voice heard. Because, of course, if that deal goes through, there are no MEPs. There's no more Alexander Phillips MEP coming out to, you know, stick it to them on question time. So
you'll have to wait for a by-election.
I know, yeah. I mean, I'd imagine one of those will probably happen quite soon, to be honest.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it could be you never know. Now fixed-term Parliament, we might get yet another election. Because if, for example, it's another hung Parliament, which is also possible, then, you know, we just have to go all over again, don't we?
Yeah, I think, look, the next 4 weeks are going to be very telling indeed. Everyone's saying Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party are out of it, but they were out of it in 2017, and my gosh, they can put up a big fight when they need to. And I think as well, you know, again, the more we talk about in media this, it's a wasted vote if you vote for a smaller party, the more you're just perpetuating this system where it's going to have to be one or the other. And the more we end up with the big issues of the day like Brexit being used as a political football and not actually really being dealt with. So I don't think...
And then bizarrely, you find yourself having to remain kind of reliant upon 10 people from a sort of slightly minority party in Northern Ireland as to whether or not you leave the European Union. And you're suddenly having smaller parties not only much more important than they probably ought to be, but the reverse has happened to what you actually meant to do.
I suppose, yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to begrudge any small party actually being in a position where they can hold the balance of power, because it's their right to be there. And I want to see more small parties of all colours and all politics coming into our parliament, because I actually think that's healthy. The argument against it, and the Conservative argument, has always been, well, it's a coalition of chaos. But actually, most developed world countries have systems of proportional representation and do have to form coalitions to then, create a government. And
Don't
I think
tell me you
that
want
actually,
another referendum on proportional representation, because you had one of those already.
I know, but do you know, I do. We need one, because I actually think when it was held last time, you had an argument to, for the Lib Dems, it was in their manifesto, and so that's how that was put on the table back then. But I can cast myself back to that referendum and remember very clearly that the Conservative Party message at the time was, well, if you have PR, you'll have the BNP in Parliament.
Yeah.
And I think it very much spooked people into backing it. And also, I don't think people really understood, it's a very difficult thing to get your head around. So I think we needed a big open debate about this for at least a good old year before we call a referendum on it, because I want people to really understand the situation and why it's necessary now to change our centuries-old political system.
OK. Do you mind if we just get Brexit done first,
Oh,
perhaps?
can we please?
Thank you very much indeed. Alex Phillips from the Brexit Party, MEP, of course, over in Brussels, until such time as we leave the European Union, which may or may not be after the election, which may or may not lead to a hung parliament, and which may or may not lead to a Tory majority. Who knows?
I was listening to Alex. I'm a paid-up supporter of the Brexit Party.
OK.
And I voted Tory in the last general election for the first time ever. And I cannot understand, as a Leaver, what is actually going on between these two parties, the Brexit Party and the Conservative Party. The Brexit Party they know that the only way we're going to get Brexit is if we get a Conservative government. And for them to come out, for Nigel Farage to come out and say what he said yesterday, does he not realise the damage that this is doing? Because, let's be honest, Mike, peerages and promises have been given out for centuries by governments and parties.
Well, Nigel Farage said himself the other day, did he not, that he's been offered a peerage many times over the course of his political career for the last 30 years or so, but he's not interested in having one, and he sort of turned it down. It didn't seem to be that big of a deal when he told that story.
No, the thing is, Mike, we know how many people are in the House of Lords because they've done favours for one or the other of the parties. I just cannot understand. What are they trying to do between them? Get Jeremy Corbyn into power? Stop Brexit with Joe Spence? Because what they're doing is not actually helping the Brexit cause.
Well, I think it's not doing anybody any favours, for sure. But if it turns out, though, Malcolm, that the Conservative Party are doing something which is illegal, whether it's unethical or not, well, it may well be. It may well be if they're sort of breaking the rules of electoral law, or if they're breaking the bribery rules, then I think we need to know about it.
Well, Anne Widdecombe was on this morning, and she stated that she'd had a phone call and was told that she was promised that she would be put on the negotiating committee or whatever team for the trade deals.
Yeah.
Is that wrong for Trump to say that? I don't think it is, because I would like somebody like Anne Widdecombe fighting Britain's corner.
Yes, no, I don't think it is wrong necessarily, but I'm not absolutely and utterly familiar with election rules. If the election rules say you can't do that, you can't effectively tell somebody not to stand in order to promise them something else, then it's not permissible. They shouldn't be doing it if that's what they're doing.
Is it not wrong then that people like Gina Miller is going around trying and the Remain Alliance and all, trying to doing exactly the same thing?
Well, yes, I mean, yes, but
it
may not be illegal. See, if you form a pact between your two parties or your three parties, which is what the Remain Alliance have done, they seem to have agreed in principle to step aside to let somebody else run. There's no kind of quid pro quo. They're not saying if you step aside, we'll give you this or we'll pay you that. As far as we know, so that's
Are they not?
Well, I don't know, Malcolm. That's my point. So
it's just ridiculous. I've never known. I'm 68. I've never known an election as stupid as this one.
Oh, well, I think we can agree on that for sure.
And the other thing is as well, Mike, while I'm on here, I can't get fibre broadband, and I've got got it all the way round me. I live near an airport. They've got it, and they're just 500 yards away.
Yeah.
I can't get it because the cables are not in there.
Well, don't worry. You'll get it free when Labour Party get in.
Well, does that mean that I won't have to pay for a television licence because I can actually watch the programmes?
Well, now that's an interesting question. I'm not sure whether they've thought that one through, to be fair. Malcolm, thanks very much indeed. I would like to actually interview Jeremy Corbyn before the end of this election process, because I'd like to ask him to please explain to me what high fibre broadband actually means and what it will do for me. Because I'm told I can't have it at the moment, and that's why my current provider is going to stop giving me Wi-Fi altogether. Marvellous, isn't it? Let's talk to Paul, who's in Norfolk. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mike. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you. What do you want to tell me?
Well, look, I'm a first-time caller. I've been listening to you for about a month now.
Brilliant.
I didn't know anything about politics, so I decided to actually Google a radio station, and yours came up, and I've been an avid listener ever
Splendid.
since. So.
Well, I'm hoping you're enjoying the show. If you're still listening, we tried to make it a bit more fun, to be honest, because there's a lot of fun to be had in politics.
To be quite honest with you, I don't really know anything about politics, and this Brexit and everything. I wanted to know a little bit more, and your programme has given me a lot of insight, so that's very good.
Good.
Listen, I had an idea a few years ago. It's when the HS2 plans came out, to be quite honest with you. I thought it was a bit of a silly idea when we've already got train lines and everything and cutting through the country and everything, but I didn't know what the general public thought about it. So I thought, hang on a minute, it's a digital age these days. Everybody's got a red button on their TV.
Yeah.
Surely there could have been like a government page, and the Prime Minister said, listen, guys, we've got this idea of the HS2, blah, blah, blah. If he thinks a really good idea, we just want a consensus sort of thing and know what your ideas are. If you think it's a good idea, vote yes. If you think it's a good idea, not a good idea, vote no, sort of thing, and it would save a lot of money in general elections.
Well, it would.
It?
I suppose technologically they would argue that it's not a very secure system, because you could suddenly find that your 5-year-old daughter had pressed the red button instead of you, and therefore...
Yeah, but we could always get over that somehow if somebody looked into it. I mean, I made an appointment with my local... politician Norman Lamb.
Right.
I literally went. I got all my bullet points sorted out. I even laminated out into sent and had an appointment. And his secretary spoke to me and said, "Can you email me all what you've got and everything?" And they cancelled the appointment on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? Well, I mean, it sounds as though you're now taking the bull by the horns, though, and you're doing what you're doing. I agree with you, sort of in principle, Paul, that in the life that we now live and in the technological age and the technology that we have now, it does seem very old-fashioned to have to walk down to a polling station, put your X on a piece of paper and then walk out again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought the government would have actually thought, do you know what? It's a good idea. It's actually giving a little bit of power back to the people.
Yeah.
And they're letting us know directly what they think of our ideas and our policies and everything like that. It's a simple thing to do, and it's there, and everybody's got it.
Yes. Maybe they're frightened of handing over too much power away from themselves and back to us, because, then many of those people that have jobs wouldn't need to be employed anymore. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I sort of, I then sort of rung a company up and I can't remember what sort of company it was, and told them about the idea, and they said, well, that's a really good idea, actually. They would either go for it or they'd pay you to shut up.